I still remember when the distance started. It didn't arrive like a storm. It crept in quietly, like fog slipping under the door. Daniel and I had been married nearly 30 years, and our life had settled into that soft rhythm only long relationships know. Shared jokes, comfortable silences, predictable habits. I used to think that meant we were safe. I was wrong. It began with his phone. For as long as I'd known him, Daniel hated technology. He'd lose his phone in couch cushions for days, never cared for social media. But suddenly, that little device became an extension of his hand. He'd tilt the screen away when I walked by. Sometimes he'd step outside to take a work call. At first I laughed it off, teased him about becoming a modern man, but there was an edge to his laugh that didn't feel right. Around the same time, Lily started visiting more often. Ethan's fiancée. She was the kind of girl every mother dreams of for her son. Kind, graceful, polite. I had loved her from the beginning. When Ethan introduced us, her smile lit up the room. She brought me flowers the next time she came. She'd sit with me, ask about recipes, talk about wedding colors. I remember thinking, she'll be good for him. She'd come when Ethan was at work, saying she wanted to surprise him with decorations or get my opinion on wedding favors. Sometimes Daniel would wander into the kitchen, and suddenly it felt like I wasn't there. Their laughter filling the space that used to belong to me. Once, while pouring tea, I noticed Daniel's eyes on her longer than they should have been. It was subtle, barely a heartbeat, but I saw it. That faint spark, the kind that belongs between lovers, not family. I told myself I imagined it. He was just fond of her. Maybe he saw the daughter we never had. That night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to Daniel's steady breathing beside me, and wondering if I was losing my mind. The weeks passed. I began to sense small shifts everywhere. Tiny things only a wife would catch. He changed his cologne. He started jogging again, buying new shirts, trimming his beard differently. I asked why, and he said, trying to stay young for the wedding photos. One Saturday morning, Lily and I were in the kitchen frosting cupcakes for the engagement party. Daniel walked in, wearing a crisp white shirt I'd never seen. I told myself it was coincidence, but when he complimented her dress, his voice carried a softness that made my stomach twist. After she left that evening, I asked him, half joking, "You two seem to get along well." He shrugged. "She's sweet, that's all." Then he looked at me and said, "Ethan's lucky." The way he said it, though, a little too quiet, made the hairs on my neck stand up. That night, I dreamed of laughter echoing down our hallway, of Lily's perfume mingling with Daniel's scent. When I woke up, I found his side of the bed empty. The clock read 2:13 a.m. Downstairs I saw the glow of his phone screen, and his face lit by blue light. He looked up, startled. "Couldn't sleep," he said. I nodded and walked back to bed. My hands were trembling. From that moment, everything I saw or heard seemed laced with suspicion. When Lily texted me, I wondered if she was really writing to me. When Daniel smiled at his phone, I wondered whose name flashed across. Yet I stayed silent, afraid that speaking it aloud would make it real. Then, one afternoon, I overheard something that shattered the fragile calm. Daniel was in the backyard on the phone, his voice low but urgent. Through the kitchen window I caught fragments. "You can't call here. She might hear. We have to be careful." My blood turned cold. He hung up quickly when I stepped outside. "Work problem," he said, forcing a smile, but his eyes darted away. That evening I went through his laundry basket, something I'd never done in my life. In the pocket of his jeans, I found a folded receipt from a restaurant, 2 dinners, candlelight service, 1 bottle of wine. The date matched a night he claimed to be working late. My chest tightened so hard I thought I'd faint. When I showed him the receipt, he didn't even look shocked. "It was a business dinner," he said, reaching for it. I held it away. "Then why is there lipstick on the napkin?" His silence answered for him. He turned away, muttering, "You're imagining things again, May. Don't let your mind ruin us." I wanted to believe him so badly that I convinced myself maybe I was imagining it. So I apologized. Can you believe that? I apologized. For the next week, He acted normal again, flowers on the table, kisses on my cheek, jokes at breakfast, but guilt doesn't hide easily. Sometimes he'd drift off mid-conversation, staring into space. Once I walked into his study and saw him gazing at a photograph, an old one of him in his 20s, holding a baby girl I didn't recognize. When he saw me, he quickly slid the picture into a drawer. I asked, "Who's that?" He smiled faintly. "An old friend's kid." Long story, I didn't press, but the image stuck in my head. That tiny girl with his same eyes. Looking back now, that was the moment everything began to unravel. I could feel the truth pressing against the walls of my life, trying to burst through. But I kept patching the cracks, terrified of what I might see if I let them open. One evening, Lily stopped by again. Daniel wasn't home yet. She seemed nervous, her eyes darting to the window every few minutes. I asked if something was wrong, and she said softly, "No, just tired." When Daniel's car pulled into the driveway, I swear I saw relief wash over her face, the kind of relief that doesn't belong to a daughter-in-law but to someone waiting for someone she should. That night, when they both laughed over some private joke at dinner, I smiled along, pretending I didn't feel the knife twist deeper. I excused myself, went upstairs and cried into my pillow until my eyes burned. I just didn't have the proof yet. That day started like any other. I remember the sun was unusually bright, one of those deceptive mornings that make you think everything is fine. I brewed coffee, watered the plants, and tried not to notice that Daniel had left early again. He said he had to handle a problem at work. I wanted to believe him, but my gut whispered otherwise. By noon, I decided I was done being the passive wife waiting for answers that never came. I'd spent weeks watching my husband slip away into a fog of secrets, and I needed to know the truth, even if it broke me. So I packed him lunch, like old times, and drove to his office without calling ahead. My hands trembled on the steering wheel the entire drive, as if some part of me already knew what I'd find. "Oh, Daniel left about an hour ago. He said he wasn't feeling well, went home to rest." Home. My heart dropped. I smiled weakly and thanked her, but inside panic bloomed like wildfire. If he'd gone home, why hadn't he called me? Why hadn't I seen his car when I left earlier? I drove faster than I should have, my mind a whirlwind of fears I didn't want to name. When I finally turned into our street, I noticed something strange. A car parked in front of our gate. Lily's car. Maybe she and Daniel were discussing wedding expenses, or maybe she came by for advice. But that small voice inside me, the one I'd ignored for weeks, whispered, "No, May, you already know why she's here." I parked quietly, my pulse pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The house was unusually quiet, except for faint music playing upstairs, Daniel's favorite playlist. That alone felt wrong. As I climbed the stairs, I heard laughter, a woman's laughter. High and soft, it echoed through the hallway, like a cruel melody. I felt dizzy, my hand shook on the banister, and for a second I thought I might collapse, but something stronger, anger, maybe, pushed me forward. The bedroom door was slightly open. Through the small gap, I saw movement, the kind of closeness you never mistake, the kind that only exists between two people crossing a sacred line. I didn't see everything. I didn't need to. One look was enough to shatter 30 years of love. I pushed the door open, and the sound of it hitting the wall was like thunder. Both of them froze, Daniel's face drained of color, and Lily's eyes widened in terror. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then my voice came out, hoarse and trembling. "What is?" Daniel stumbled for words, reaching out. "May, it's not what you think. Not what I think." I laughed, though it came out more like a sob. "Tell me, Daniel, how many ways can I misunderstand this?" Lily burst into tears, covering her face, her whole body shaking. I could barely look at her. "My son's fiancée, the girl I treated like a daughter. How long?" I demanded. "How long have you been betraying me, betraying Ethan?" Daniel's voice cracked. "It just happened. It wasn't planned." "Don't insult me with that lie." I spat. "You think people just accidentally destroy their family?" He tried to take a step closer, but I backed away. I couldn't bear his touch. Every inch of me burned with disgust. The air itself felt poison. Lily sobbed, whispering, "I didn't mean for this to happen. Please, May." I didn't know what. I snapped, Didn't know he was my husband. Didn't know you were supposed to marry my son. Which part confused you? Daniel ran a hand through his hair, pacing, desperate. May, please, let me explain. It's more complicated than it looks. Complicated, I cried. You destroyed everything we built, Daniel. Everything. He stopped then, shoulders sagging, face pale. Lily's crying quieted, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. Something about her silence felt strange. Not just guilt, but fear. Say something, I demanded. Both of you owe me the truth. Lily finally looked up, her voice shaking. May, there's something you don't know. Lily, no. Daniel tried to stop her, but she continued, her words tumbling out through tears. I found a photograph in his study, an old picture, him holding a baby. My mother told me the truth when I showed it to her. May, Daniel is my father. The world fell silent. The music from the speaker faded into static. My vision blurred. What did you just say? She nodded, sobbing harder. My mother told me she had a child with a man named Daniel Turner. His face was ashen, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't breathe. It's true, he whispered. Before I met you, I didn't know she existed until a few months ago. She reached out to me, said she wanted to know who her father was. I didn't know how to tell you. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. So you thought the best way to handle it was to destroy her life and mine. His voice cracked. It wasn't like that. I wanted to help her, to make up for lost years, but I crossed a line I can never undo. The room spun. I couldn't breathe. Every heartbeat felt like a hammer against my ribs. My knees buckled, and I gripped the doorframe for balance. Lily fell to her knees, crying. I swear, I didn't know, May. I didn't know he was my father until it was too late. I stared at both of them. My husband, my son's fiancée, my husband's daughter. A tangled web of betrayal and blood. The pain was indescribable, like a physical wound tearing open inside me. Without another word, I turned and walked away. Daniel called after me, his voice breaking, but I didn't look back. Down the stairs, out the door, into the daylight that suddenly felt cruel and too bright. In the car, my hands trembled on the steering wheel. I wanted to scream, to smash something to make the pain stop, but I just sat there frozen, tears spilling down my face in silence. That's when I realized, some betrayals don't just hurt you, they unmake you. And in that moment, I knew my life would never ever be the same again. Didn't sleep that night. My body was still, but my mind was a storm that refused to quiet down. I could still hear the echoes of his voice, his trembling apologies, her sobs muffled by her hand. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that doorway, that betrayal frozen in time like a cruel painting. By morning, the house was quiet again. Too quiet. My son Daniel had left early for work, cheerful and clueless, just like every other morning. My husband sat in the kitchen, pretending to read the newspaper, but his hands shook when he turned the pages. I watched him for a moment before speaking. We need to talk. He looked up, and for a second I saw the same man I'd loved for over 20 years, the man who used to bring me tea every morning, who once promised that I'd never cry because of him, but now he just looked small, ashamed. May, he started, his voice cracking. I made a terrible mistake. I don't expect forgiveness. Stop, I said, holding up a hand. You will tell me everything, and you will not lie to me again. He nodded slowly, folding the newspaper like a man surrendering his last defense. It started months ago, he admitted, eyes glued to the floor. When Daniel brought Emily home, I felt something familiar. I couldn't explain it at first, but then she looked at me, and I knew. May, she's connected to my I froze. What do you mean? Connected to your past? He swallowed hard.
Before you and I met, years before, I had a relationship. It was brief, and it ended badly. The woman, she got pregnant. I didn't know. She disappeared, moved away. I tried to find her once, but she wanted nothing to do with me. And last year, she passed away. The room tilted around me. Are you saying? Yes, he whispered. She's my daughter. The air left my lungs. My knees buckled, and I gripped the counter for balance. For a moment I couldn't hear anything but the pounding of my own heartbeat in my ears. You mean to tell me? I said, my voice shaking, that the woman our son is engaged to is his half-sister. Tears streamed down his face. I didn't know at first, I swear it. But when I found out, when she told me who her mother was, I panicked. I wanted to tell Daniel, but she begged me not to. She said she didn't want to destroy him or you. I stared at him, disbelief clawing at my chest. So instead, you what? You started an affair with her? He dropped his head into his hands, sobbing. It wasn't like that, May. I was weak. She was angry, confused. She said I ruined her life before it even began. She wanted revenge, and I let it happen. I thought if I gave her what she wanted, she'd stay quiet. I was wrong. The words hit me like stone. I turned away, pressing a trembling hand over my mouth to keep from screaming. The betrayal, the disgust, the horror, it all merged into one unbearable weight on my chest. Behind me, he whispered, I never meant to hurt you or Daniel. I just didn't know what else to do. I spun around. You didn't know what else to do. You could have told the truth. You could have stopped this before it went this far. His voice cracked. I was scared, May. I didn't want to lose everything. Well, I said bitterly, you just did. I left the kitchen before I could break completely. Upstairs, in the quiet of our bedroom, I fell to the floor and sobbed until my throat burned. Every memory, every moment of happiness, every shared smile, every family dinner felt tainted now. By evening, Daniel came home. I watched him laugh at his phone, probably texting Emily, completely unaware of the nightmare about to swallow us all. I couldn't bring myself to tell him, not yet. Not until I could find the right words, if there were any. Later that night, Emily came by. She looked nervous, pale, her eyes red as if she'd been crying too. When she saw me at the door, she hesitated. May, she whispered, can we talk? I let her in, but my voice was cold. Your fiancé isn't home yet. I know, she said softly. I came to see you. We sat in the living room, the same place she'd once sat laughing with my son, talking about wedding plans and honeymoons. Now, the silence between us was suffocating. She spoke first. You know, don't you? I nodded. I know everything. Tears welled in her eyes. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I just wanted answers. I wanted to know why he left my mother alone, why I grew up without a father while he built a new life with you. Her voice cracked, and for the first time, I saw the brokenness behind her anger. She wasn't just a manipulative young woman, she was a wounded soul. You could have confronted him, I said quietly. You could have asked for the truth. I tried, she said, shaking her head. But when I saw how happy you all were, I hated you. I hated everything you had that I didn't. I didn't plan to fall for Daniel, I swear I did. And when I found out he was my half-brother, I was already in too deep. My stomach turned. So you decided to destroy us instead? She wiped her tears. I thought I could make him feel the pain my mother felt. But then I realized, I loved him, and I couldn't go through with it anymore. I was going to end things with him and tell him the truth before the wedding. Her confession left me speechless. I looked at her, this girl, who had unintentionally woven herself into our lives, and I saw the tragedy of it all. Everyone was hurting. Everyone had been deceived. You need to tell him, I said finally, my voice trembling. He deserves to know. He deserves the truth, before this destroys him. She nodded, her tears falling freely. I will, I promise. That night, after she left, I sat alone in the dark. My husband had gone to a hotel too ashamed to face me. My son was out, blissfully unaware, and I sat there clutching my wedding ring in my hand, realizing that the family I'd spent my life building had shattered beyond repair. But deep down, beneath the grief, a small flicker of strength began to burn. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I would survive this. The next morning, the sunlight poured through the blinds as if the world hadn't changed, as if everything was still normal. But inside me, nothing felt normal anymore. My chest felt hollow, my mind heavy. Every sound, every creak in the house carried the weight of what I now knew. I sat at the dining table with a cup of coffee I couldn't drink, staring at Daniel's baby photos framed on the wall. My boy. My innocent boy who believed his life was just beginning. He had no idea that the ground beneath him was about to crumble. When Daniel came downstairs, he was smiling. "Morning, Mom," he said, grabbing toast from the counter. "Emily and I are going to the venue later, final fittings and stuff. You'll love what she picked for the theme." The words pierced through me. How could I tell him? How could I look at him and destroy everything he was dreaming of? "Daniel," I said softly, "can we talk before you go?" He frowned. "Sure, what's wrong?" Before I could speak, the doorbell rang. My heart skipped. It was Emily. She stood there pale, her hands trembling. She looked like she hadn't slept either. "May," she whispered, "can I?" Then she saw Daniel behind me, and her breath caught. "Daniel," I sighed. "Hey," he smiled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Ready for the day?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Actually, there's something I need to tell you." My husband's car pulled up just then. The timing felt like fate. Cruel, unavoidable fate. When he walked in, he froze, seeing us all together. The tension in the room grew thick enough to choke on. Daniel looked between us. "What's going on? Why are you all acting weird?" I turned to Emily, my voice steady but gentle. "You said you'd tell him." She nodded slowly, her face streaked with tears. "Daniel, this is going to sound impossible, but it's the truth. I didn't know how to tell you before, and I'm so sorry." He frowned, confused. "Emily, you're scaring me." She looked at my husband, her biological father, for strength, but he couldn't even meet her eye. "Your father," she began, voice trembling, "knew my mother a long time ago. Before he met your mom, they had a relationship, and I'm her daughter." The silence that followed was unbearable. Daniel stared at her, waiting for the punchline, but none came. "What do you mean?" he said finally, his voice breaking. "I mean," she sobbed, "I'm your half-sister." His face drained of color. He stepped back, shaking his head. No, that's not possible. This is insane. You're lying." "I wish I were," she whispered. He turned to me then, desperate. "Mom, please tell me this isn't true." My heart shattered. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's true." He stared at me in horror, then at his father. "You knew? You both knew. And didn't tell me?" "I didn't know at first," his father said weakly. "I swear I didn't. When I found out, I didn't know how." Daniel's voice rose, full of anguish. "How to what? How to ruin my life? How to make me fall in love with my sister?" Daniel ran a shaking hand through his hair, pacing the room like a man trapped in a nightmare. "You should have told me the moment you knew," he yelled. "Do you have any idea what this feels like?" My husband tried to step closer, but Daniel pushed him away. "Don't. Just..." He turned to Emily, his eyes red and broken. "Did you know?" "I didn't," she whispered. "Not until recently. I was going to tell you, I swear." She covered her face and sobbed harder. I wanted to reach out, to hold him, but he pulled away from everyone. I can't be here right now." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily collapsed on the couch, trembling. My husband stood frozen, staring at the floor, and I stood there in the ruins of my family, wondering how we'd ever find our way back. That night, Daniel didn't come home. I called his phone again and again, but it went straight to voicemail. I sat by the window until dawn, praying he was safe. In the morning the police called. They had found his car parked by the cliffs, empty. My heart stopped beating for a second. They said they were searching the area. I dropped the phone and screamed until my voice broke. Hours later, they found him sitting near the edge, alive, thank God, but hollow, numb, barely able to speak. When I saw him at the hospital, he looked like a ghost. "Mom," he said softly, "I don't know who I am anymore. Everything I believed in, it's gone." I took his hand and whispered through my tears, "You're my son. That's who you are. No matter what happens, that will never change." He squeezed my hand weakly. "I just wish you'd all been honest. Maybe then I could have survived this without hating you." Those words cut deeper than any knife. In the days that followed, Emily left town. She couldn't face Daniel or herself. My husband tried to talk to me, to explain again, but I couldn't listen anymore. Every time I looked at him, I saw the wreckage of what he'd done. So I packed his things and left them by the door. You need to go, I told him quietly. Whatever this family was, you destroyed it, and I won't live in this house full of lies. He begged, cried, promised to change, but I was done. When he finally drove away, I stood in the doorway and felt an odd calm settle over me. I was still broken, still grieving, but I was no longer powerless. I had spent years being the glue that held everyone together. Now I realized I had to learn how to hold myself together. After he left, the house became unbearably quiet. You don't realize how much noise love makes until it's gone. The laughter, the arguments, the footsteps in the hallway, all of it, suddenly erased. The silence was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. I spent days wandering from room to room, like a ghost in my own life. The kitchen still smelled faintly of his coffee. Daniel's childhood drawings still hung crooked on the wall. There were reminders everywhere, pieces of a family that no longer existed. Daniel stayed with a friend for a while. He didn't talk much, not even to me. I tried calling every day, but most of the time, he wouldn't answer. When he finally did, his voice was distant, careful, as if speaking to me might reopen a wound he was trying desperately to close. "Mom," he said one night, over the phone, "I need some time. Please understand." I did understand, because I needed time too. Emily never came back. She sent me one letter. Short, tear-stained, and full of regret. She wrote that she'd gone to another state, that she was starting therapy, that she didn't want to ruin anyone's life any further. She said she hoped someday I could forgive her, and despite everything, I think I already had. She was a product of secrets that weren't her, a child abandoned by truth. How could I hate her for wanting to find answers, even if she went about it in all the wrong ways? But forgiveness didn't come easily for my husband. I tried, I really did. There were nights when I sat by the window, watching cars pass by, hoping one of them would stop in front of the house and he'd walk back in. But then I'd remember the look in Daniel's eyes when the truth came out, that pain, that betrayal, and I knew some things could never be repaired. He called a few times, left messages I never answered. The last one he left said simply, "I'm sorry, May. I wish I'd been braver." Braver, that word stuck with me, because that's what I had to become now. Brave, for myself, for my son, for the woman I'd once been before lies and heartbreak took everything from her. I started small. I went back to work at the local library, where I hadn't worked since Daniel was a toddler. The first day was hard. Faces I hadn't seen in years, questions I wasn't ready to answer. But slowly, day by day, I began to feel like myself again. I found solace in quiet moments, in the smell of old books, the sound of rain on the windows, the simple rhythm of daily life. It wasn't much, but it was mine. And then one afternoon, as I was shelving books, a familiar voice said softly, "Mom?" I turned, and there was Daniel. His eyes were tired, older somehow, but gentler too. "Can we talk?" he asked. We sat in the corner of the library, where no one could overhear us. He took a deep breath. "I've been thinking a lot, about everything, about you." Tears welled up before I could stop them. "Daniel, I'm so sorry for what you went through, for what we put you through." He shook his head. "You didn't do anything wrong, Mom. You were just caught in the middle of everyone else's lies." I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away this time. "I'm trying to move forward," he said. "I've been seeing a therapist. I'm learning how to forgive, not forget, but forgive." A small smile broke through my tears. "That's all I ever wanted for you." We talked for hours that day, about the past, about the future, about learning to heal. When we left the library together, the sun was setting, painting the sky in soft orange and gold. For the first time in months, I felt warmth that wasn't painful. Healing isn't a straight line. There were still days I woke up crying, still nights when I replayed everything in my mind and wondered how different life could have been if truth had come soon. But I also began to understand something. Sometimes, the destruction of everything you know is the only way to uncover who you truly are. I had spent years defining myself as a wife and a mother, but now, For the first time, I was just May, a woman who had survived. I started writing again, journaling, mostly, pouring out my grief, my rage, my hope. Some nights I'd write until dawn, and it felt like each word was pulling a little piece of pain out of me. Months passed. Daniel moved back into town, though he didn't move in with me. We met every Sunday for lunch. It wasn't the same as before. Maybe it never would be, but it was something real, something honest. One evening, as we were cleaning up after dinner, he said quietly, "Mom, you know, despite everything, I think you're the strongest person I know." I laughed softly. "I don't feel strong," he smiled. "You don't have to feel it, you just are." The same sky that had witnessed every heartbreak I'd endured now seemed peaceful, like it was whispering, "You made it through." And I had. My husband's betrayal, Emily's truth, Daniel's pain, all of it had burned me to ashes. But from those ashes, something new was growing, a version of me that wasn't afraid to stand alone. I sold the house not long after. There were too many ghosts in those walls. I moved to a small cottage by the sea, quiet, simple, with white curtains that fluttered in the breeze. The first morning I woke there, I brewed a cup of coffee, sat by the window, and for the first time in years, I felt peace. I thought about my past, the love that turned to lies, the family torn apart, and instead of sadness, I felt gratitude, because it all led me here, to this stillness, to this strength. I still wear my wedding ring sometimes, not as a symbol of marriage, but as a reminder that I loved, that I lost, and that I lived through it. Life doesn't give us the endings we want, it gives us the ones we need to grow. And as I sat watching the waves crash softly against the shore, I whispered to myself, "You survived, May, you survived."